Good evening to all, and thank you for joining and welcome to ICAR JRF Plant Science online classes. So, with the ongoing plant breeding sessions, today we will be seeing about other different types of breeding methods, such as your pedigree breeding, bulk breeding, and backcross breeding programs. So, let us start with pedigree breeding. Uh, so before directly jumping into what is pedigree breeding, what is its procedure, and how we will be proceeding. So we will see what does the name pedigree means. Okay. So can anyone say what does the name pedigree means? What do pedigree means? So how can you define the term pedigree? Pedigree is nothing but to maintain ancestral records. Okay. So throughout this breeding program, we will be maintaining the ancestral records. So the pedigree breeding, it was given by a scientist. His name was Lowe. It was not written in any book, but please do note down. Pedigree breeding was given by a scientist named Lowe, and then the meaning to pedigree is nothing but to maintain records, okay, of their ancestors. So we are dealing with pedigree breeding, bulk breeding, and backcross breeding in today's class. All these three breeding procedures, they involve hybridization, okay, which is nothing but crossing. So please remember, this might be a bit in your JRF. Pedigree breeding, bulk breeding, and backcross breeding involve hybridization. The common thing is they have the hybridization going on, okay, in the first generation itself. So pedigree breeding, the name given by it was explained by a scientist named Lowe, and then the pedigree name itself indicates to maintain the ancestral records. Okay, so now we will see how the pedigree breeding procedure is being generally followed. So if you see in the first generation itself, we are having two parents. Okay, as I told you earlier, we will be following the hybridization program. So parent one and parent two. What they are doing, it is nothing but crossing between these two parents, and then we will be raising the F1 progeny. There is only one single crossing, okay, and then up to we get a ultimate variety, everything is your selfing. So it is represented by your filial generations 1, 2, 3, so on. Okay, so and then you will be following selfing until you get the ultimate product. So after raising your F1, it has clearly mentioned what are the steps involved in the pedigree breeding. Point number one, we need to choose the parents and then perform hybridization between them. And then you have to grow the F1 in a space planted manner. Okay. Why for space planting? Because you can visualize all the plants if you grow it in a large field. After selfing this F1, you need to harvest the seeds of F1 in bulk, right? And then you need to again grow the F2, and then you also need to space plant the F2 so that you can see what are the superior plants, okay, and then you'll again self it. After selfing from a single F2 plant, you will be forming the plant to row method, okay. So from a single plant, you will be forming the row, which is nothing but said to be your family rows, okay. So you'll be performing the family row, and then from this family row you will be again selfing this, and then you will be again forming different family rows. All right, this has been followed up to how many generations you can get a desirable product, okay, or you will see the improvement. You can go on performing such selfing, and then after attaining a certain type of yield, you can forward the material to preliminary yield trials, advanced yield trials, and then you can ultimately release the cultivar. Okay, so it is just as simple as that. First, you need to cross these two parents, and then you need to grow the F1, and from F1 to last you will be performing the artificial selection, that is human will be performing the selection process. Right, in every generation you will be picking which is the best plant, and then you will be raising its progeny again, selfing it again, picking the best plant, raising its progeny, and then forwarding it to different yield trials, and then you will be ultimately releasing the cultivar. Okay, did you guys understood about pedigree breeding? And next thing is that, for example, if you picked a plant number 2 in F2, okay, plant number 2 in F2, so we will mention the plant number 2 in F2, and then we will note the progeny number. Okay, if it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so you have grown the F2 second plant in F2 generation as progeny row 5. So you will write fifth row F3 progeny, and then again. So you need to maintain the record. Okay, this is nothing but maintaining the record, that is pedigree maintaining. Pedigree maintenance means you are just maintaining the record. So this is, for example, let us consider this is the first F2 plant you selected, this is the second one, and this is the third one, and then we have grown this second one. So you need to write the second F2 plant, and then what is its row that you are selecting in the F3. So it is the fifth row, which is your fifth row of F3, and then so like that. So F4 you will give a certain number, and then for F5, right? You will be maintaining the pedigree. This is the pedigree breeding procedure. It is very simple. You need to first cross the two parents, and then you will go on selfing them by maintaining the pedigree, and after achieving certain desirable extent, you will be going for preliminary yield trials and advanced yield trials, and then releasing the cultivar. Is it okay? Hmm? Even right now. Hello? Okay. So it was visible the entire time, right? Someone was saying it was not visible. Okay, so Nishant, I'll explain you again. Just listen. Pedigree breeding is just simple that you need to choose two parents. You need to cross between these two parents. This is the only cross that will be performing the pedigree breeding, and all the generations will be selfing it. So after attaining the F1, you will self them, and then you will select the superior plant in F2, and then you will forward them to F3 just by selfing. So after getting a desirable extent of your result, you will be performing with the yield trials, and then you will be releasing the cultivar. But you need to maintain the pedigree, that is the record maintenance of their ancestor. Okay, for example, if you select the second F2 plant, you will just note 2 F2, and then the fifth row of your F3 is the progeny of your second F2, so 5 F3, and so on. Will be maintaining the pedigree record. This pedigree breeding, it was given by a scientist named Lowe. Okay, so if you go on selfing the plants from F1 to until you attain it, you will getting a desirable product. So what will be the zygosity condition of the plant at last?
Homozygous.
Yeah, it will be homozygous, right? So it will be homozygous in condition. So this might also be a question in your JRF. Okay. So pedigree breeding, it was given by Lowe, and the name itself indicates that we need to maintain the ancestral records. Okay. Is it okay? See, in the breeding procedures, there will be very few questions like just who proposed the method, and what do you mean by the method, what will be the ultimate product from this method, etc. like that, right? So if you guys understood about the pedigree breeding procedure, now there is another scientist, his name was Harrington. we gave a modification to this pedigree method, which was known as mass pedigree method. Mass pedigree method. Okay. So, can anyone say what do you mean by mass pedigree method? Mass pedigree method is nothing but, see, whenever the conditions or the environment is favorable, you can go and select the plant, which is nothing but your artificial selection. But if the conditions are not favorable, what you can do is you can just harvest the seeds from all these plants and then bulk them, okay, and then forward it. This method is known as your mass pedigree method, which was given by a scientist named Harrington. Okay, so Harrington gave the mass pedigree method. This is one of your question. And second is a scientist named Harland used this mass pedigree method in cotton. Please to note this. This was mentioned in your Kundan Singh book. Okay. So mass pedigree method was given by scientist named Harrington, but Harland carried out this mass pedigree method in cotton plant. Okay, and one of the famous example for the variety which was produced using this pedigree method in cotton was Subin. And one characteristic feature of Subin is that it is a naked cotton seed. Naked cotton seeds. Okay, please to remember this. Just remember Subin. The variety which was produced by pedigree method in cotton is Subin. So, do anyone know what are the what do you call that, the miracle rice variety of India? Miracle rice variety of India. What do you call that? What is the miracle rice variety of India? Jaya. Right. So Jaya was also developed by using this pedigree method. So can anyone name what are the parents of Jaya? What are the parentage of Jaya? So please to remember the parentage of Jaya. It is Taiching native 1 into type 141. Okay. And then if you reverse this cross, they have obtained the other variety which is known as your Padma. So Taiching native 1 into type 141 gives Jaya, but type 141 into Taiching native 1, it lead to the production of the variety named Padma. Is it okay? So please to remember the parentage. Parentage is most important, most particularly in Jaya and Padma. This was asked many times in both SRF as well as your JRF. The parentage of your Jaya, it is Taiching 81 into type 141, and then Padma is type 141 into Taiching 81. So they may also confuse you just by giving TN141 into type 1. That this year SRF question. What is the parentage of your Jaya? And the options were Taiching 81 into type 141, and other options were to confuse you like type TN141 into type 1 like that. So please remember Taiching native 1 into type 141. If you reverse this, that is, if you perform a reciprocal cross, you will be getting the Padma variety. So both this Jaya and Padma were developed in rice using the pedigree breeding procedure. Pedigree breeding, right? So is it okay? Okay. Okay. So, you just saw that we'll just cross the two parents, and then until you get a desired extent of result, you will be performing the artificial selection. That is, you will be getting into the field and you will be selecting the plants. So this is artificial selection, right? So pedigree breeding, it involves the artificial selection from F1 itself. Immediately after growing the F1, you will be selecting a good plant, and then you will be forwarding F2, you will be forwarding, you will be selecting the F3 and forward. So at the time of selecting, you need to note the record, right? So which plant am I selecting, and from which plant which row am I growing? So you need to maintain the ancestral record. This ancestral record is nothing but your pedigree, and hence the name pedigree breeding, right? And now we will be dealing with the bulk breeding. So bulk breeding, it has many names. Okay, so some people say it as population method. Population method. And another scientist named Simpson, he told that it is the evolutionary method of crop improvement. Evolutionary method of crop improvement. Okay, so can anyone guess why it is known as the evolutionary method of crop improvement? So why it is known as
As well
evolutionary?
as natural selection both operate in it.
Uh, yeah, please repeat it. What is it?
That both natural selection and artificial selection operate in.
Yeah, bulk breeding, it involves both your artificial selection as well as your natural selection. So it was ultimately defined as the evolutionary method of crop improvement. Okay. So please remember, this might be the assertion and this might be your reason. Such type of question. Is it right? Okay. This might be your assertion. This is bulk breeding is also known as evolutionary method of crop improvement. And reason is it involves both your natural and artificial selection. Right? So do you know who was the scientist who gave the name bulk? That is your bulk breeding method. Who is the scientist who gave it? Who gave it? It was given by a scientist named Nielsen Ehle. So please remember the scientist name. Pedigree breeding scientist was not much so important, but breeding, bulk breeding is important. Okay, Nielsen Ehle. So please to remember it is Nielsen Ehle. So different names are just like your population method. Some call it as population method, and some people call it as your evolutionary method, etc. Right? And then now we will see what are its main features and how the procedure is being carried out. So it is as simple as your pedigree method. Just we will see, you will be selecting two parents and then you will be crossing the two parents. After crossing the two parents, you will be developing the F1. After developing the F1, you will again continue to self up to F5 generations. But the only difference is that up to this F5 generation, what you will be performing is natural selection. That is, you will just leave the plants in the field and allow the nature to select, which means whatever the plant which is good enough, so it produces its progeny and you will forward it. Up to F5 generation, you will follow the natural selection. And then from the F6 generation, you will be following the artificial selection. And then you will forward it to the different trials, and then ultimately you will release the best cultivar. Okay, so the only difference between your bulk breeding method and pedigree breeding method is that everything is similar, the procedure is similar, except that up to F5 you will be performing the natural selection, and from F6 you will be performing the artificial selection. So as both natural selection and artificial selection are involved, this breeding method, it is known as evolutionary method. Evolutionary method of crop improvement. So who gave this bulk breeding method? Can anyone say who gave this
Nilsson
bulk
L.
breeding? Nielsen Hele was a scientist who gave this bulk breeding method. Okay. And then there is one modification to this bulk breeding method. So this is known as single seed descent method, SSD. Okay. Do anyone have idea who gave this single seed descent method? His name was Gaulden, who gave this single seed descent method in self-pollinated crops. Okay. And then this was also applied in oats by a scientist named Graphius, and it was also applied in soybean by a scientist named Brim. So please to remember all the three names. Gaulden gave the procedure in self-pollinated plant, and then Graphius performed it in oats, and Brim performed it in soybean. So single seed descent method is very simple. After crossing two parents, you will be generally developing the F1, and you will ultimately develop, let us assume, up to whatever extent you will get the desired result. But from every generation, you will be just selecting a single seed, okay, only a single seed, and then you will grow it. So again single seed, and then you will grow it. Again single seed, and then you will grow it. So the name itself indicates that it is single seed descent. So you will be just forwarding a single seed from a selected plant, right? So just to remember that single seed descent method, it ultimately results in the formation of reels. After getting into your masters, you will know what do you mean by reels. But up to now, just know single seed descent method, it ultimately leads to the formation of your reels. So can anyone say what do you mean by reels? What is the full form of reel?
Sir, only full form, no, sir. Not in detail.
Okay, just tell me the full form of reel. That is what I'm asking. What is it?
Recombinant inbred line.
Uh, it is nothing but your recombinant inbred lines. Okay, so single seed descent method is used to develop your reels. Okay, recombinant inbred lines. As simple as your bulk and pedigree, just you will be crossing the two parents, and then from every generation you will be selecting a single seed forward it, again select a single seed forward it, right? So ultimately you will be obtaining the real population. Okay, it is nothing but
Sir,
fit to be.
excuse me.
Yeah.
Sir, single seed descent method is modification of bulk method or pedigree.
Yeah. Some people say it is bulk, some people say it is pedigree.
Okay.
Okay. In some books it was written as a bulk, in some books it was written as the modified pedigree method, right?
Sir, so what we will mark?
Even I can't stand on a particular thing, because in some books it was modified pedigree, in some books it was modified bulk. Okay.
Okay, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, but in Kundan Singh book it was given under the chapter of what do you call bulk breeding. But in foreign author books, it was that it was not even in the chapter of pedigree breeding or bulk breeding, but it was completely mentioned as the modified pedigree breeding. Okay, but mostly both bulk breeding and pedigree breeding are similar, right? Except
Yes,
that in
sir.
bulk breeding you will be performing the natural selection. That is, you will just leave it to your nature, right? And then you will, after F5, that is your fifth filial generation, you will start selecting from the F6. Right, that is what we saw here. Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so just to remember, this might be one of the questions, that the single seed descent method ultimate product will be your rill. Okay, but one of the most disadvantage of this method is that, see, you will be selecting only a single seed. Okay, if you unfortunately select a bad seed, then what happens? what happens? So you are rejecting the good one, right? So which means the major problem in this single seed descent method is that you may lose the good plant. So plant loss, a better plant might be lost. So this is one of the disadvantage of this single seed descent method. So please remember this might be one of your questions. Okay, so better plant it might get lost if you select the if you unfortunately select the bad or somewhat defective type of seed or plant. Is it okay about the bulk method and then it's a single seed descent method? Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the only difference between your bulk and pedigree method is that pedigree method does not have the natural selection, but bulk method will allow it for natural selection. And one more thing is that bulk breeding it takes more time than pedigree. Please do note this point. Bulk breeding takes more time. Takes more time than pedigree. Okay. So bulk breeding it generally takes more time when compared to the pedigree breeding. So both the pedigree as well as bulk takes more time. Okay, but bulk takes much more time than the pedigree breeding. And releasing a variety through pedigree breeding and bulk breeding, it may nearly cost you up to 10 to 12 years. Okay, so they may cost up to 10 to 12 years in order to release you the variety. Right. So if you say which is the selection that involves both nature and human, what is it? Which breeding method involves
Bulk.
both? Bulk method, okay. So both nature as well as human. That is, human is nothing but your artificial selection because you are getting into the field and you will be selecting the plant. Whereas in case of your pedigree, it is entirely you, which is the artificial selection, okay. So please remember, and then you will be maintaining the pedigree record. You will be maintaining a separate book and you will be noting down so from which plant I took the F2 and from which plant it was forwarded to F3, F3 to F4 until you get the desired one. You will be maintaining the record, right? So now we will see the backcross method. So do you guys have idea who gave the backcross breeding procedure? Anyone who gave the backcross breeding procedure? Who is the scientist that gave the backcross breeding procedure? Backcross breeding procedure was given by Harlan and Pope. Okay, it was once asked in your JRF examination. Please to remember, it was given by scientists named Harlan and Pope. So while discussing the what do you call that male sterility, I told you that why this backcross breeding program is mainly used. Can anyone say why it is used? Backcross breeding program. For which purpose it is mainly used?
Transfer of character from one to another.
Okay, you mean by transfer of genes, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what exactly is backcross breeding? So you have parent A, and you will be crossing with parent B, and you will get a F1. So let us assume that this A is the recessive homozygous, and then this B is the homozygous dominant. So if you cross the F1 with A, what do you call this? Yeah, what do you call this?
Test cross, sir.
Yeah, it is known as test cross. So if you cross F1 with B, then what do you call this? This is known as backcross. Is it right? So please to remember, test cross is also a type of backcross. Okay, right? So we can also call this backcross, but more particularly we call it as your test cross, right? So exact definition of backcross is that crossing the progeny with any of its parent. Okay, this is known as your backcross. If you cross the progeny with homozygous recessive parent, this is known as your test cross. So backcross with any of the parent, test cross with the homozygous recessive parent. So do remember these two terms. And before entering into the breeding procedure, two other important terms are your recurrent and non-recurrent. So what is the meaning of recurrent? What do you mean by the word recurrent? Or you can take the example of recurrent parent and death. What is recurrent?
Again and again.
Yeah, the exact meaning of the word recurrent means again and again. So repeatedly, again and again. Okay. So if you use the same parent again and again, so we will ultimately call it as recurrent parent. So if you use it only once and you will keep it aside, so it is known as your non-recurrent parent. Okay. So these two terms, recurrent and non-recurrent. And other important concept is what is the percentage of genome we will get, that we need to understand. Okay. So let us say this is parent A and this is parent B. So parent A has cytoplasm X and parent B has cytoplasm Y, and parent A has a nuclear condition of small a and parent B with small b. Okay, is it visible? Guys, is my writing visible, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll just zoom it to you. Okay. So if you perform a cross between these two parents, so tell me what will be the status of cytoplasm? From where the progeny will get the cytoplasm? From A parent or B parent?
Yeah.
A. Why? Why A?
Female parent.
Yeah, so we will always, in a cross, we will describe or write female parent as the first one, right? So we will always get the cytoplasm from the female parent. Okay. So what will be the nuclear condition of the progeny then?
Maybe
Both A, B. Alright, in which proportion?
1:1.
So that is your 50% of A plus 50% of B, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you again perform a cross between this progeny, that is your F1, then let us write F1 into A as well as F1 into B. So now tell me what is the cytoplasm condition in the first cross.
X.
What is the cytoplasm condition in the first cross? What it will be?
X.
X. In the second one?
X.
X. And then what will be the condition of the nuclear in the first cross?
75% is A.
75% of A, and remaining will be the B, right? So what will be the in this? So it will be exactly opposite. That is your 75% of B and 25% of A. So okay. So if you go on, so what do you call this progeny? See, I told you that this progeny is represented by F1, as it is a progeny between two parents that obtained by hybridization. So it is F1. So if you cross the F1 with one of its parents, how do you represent this progeny? Do it has any particular term to represent?
PC1.
Only BC1. Can we represent it as only BC1? So we need to represent it as BC
BC1, F1,
and F1. Okay.
F1.
Okay. So this is known as your BC1 and F1. So if you again perform a cross with BC1 F1 with A, then your progeny is represented as BC2 F1. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what happened to the nuclear condition in this? It is again that 87.5% of your A and 12.5% of your B. If you again cross it with your A, right? So it will again the A genome content increases. That is a nuclear condition, and B it decreases. A increases and B decreases. Okay. So you'll be performing to such an extent that uh, there is nearly 99% of your A nuclear genome, right? That is the aim of your backcross breeding, right?
Yes, sir.
Right. So this is not the sole aim of backcross breeding. You need to achieve 99.9% of A genome. But from the B genome, if there are any desirable genes, we need to transfer these desirable genes from the B genome to the A genome, right? This completes the backcross
Yes, sir.
breeding, right? Yeah. So if you already have the resistance or something which is performing better in the B genome, right? Why you need to transfer it to the A genome? What is the reason? Can anyone say what is the reason why we need to transfer it again to other genome?
Sir, for example, if A genome is good yielding, and but it is susceptible to particular disease, and
Okay.
B genome is resistant to that disease, but is not good. So
Oh,
we
oh,
will.
okay. So you just want to say that A is agronomically superior, right? Means it has all good characteristics in terms of yield, physiology, everything. But it lacks a certain gene, right, that imparts death. If the gene is not present, it might be susceptible to some disease and ultimately lead to death. And B genome is not agronomically superior, and it has those resistant genes. So you need to just transfer this resistant gene from the B genome to A genome so that you will be having the agronomic superiority of your A now incorporated with the gene from the B, right? Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this is this main aim of your backcross breeding program. So how many backcrosses are sufficient to retain the genotype of your desirable variety? How many? There is particular number. How many back crosses are sufficient? Do anyone know? See, people say it has 5 to 6 back crosses, or some people say it is 6 to 7 back crosses. So please to remember. So it is 5 to 6 or 6 to 7. You just need to know. Okay. So we'll again return to the concept of your recurrent and non-recurrent. So based on this example, okay, so if B have the desirable gene and then A does not have the desirable gene, if you need to transfer this to this, so among these two, what will be your non-recurrent parent?
B.
B.
Yeah, B is your non-recurrent parent. So what do you also call the non-recurrent parent based on these terms? Any other name for the non-recurrent parent? Is there any other name? Other name for your non-recurrent parent, that is your B? Anyone? Yeah, someone wrote it as donor. So we can call it as donor, right? Because this is the one which is donating the gene to this. So what do you also call the recurrent parent then? So if this is donor, so what will your recurrent parent become? Recipient, right? So it is your recipient and it is your donor. So now you got clear about the concept of to which parent we need to backcross it and how the nuclear status and then the cytoplasmic status changes after every cross. Okay, so and how many backcrosses are required, etc. And it is used to transfer your genes. So now tell me which genes can you transfer most effectively using the backcross breeding method? Which genes?
Single gene. Oligogene.
Yeah, oligogene. Okay,
Monogene.
so mostly oligogenic and particularly if it is governed by your monogenic condition, that is a single gene, right? So can you tell me the examples of oligogenic genes?
Sir, Milo disease in sorghum.
Okay, means the resistance governing that gene, right?
Southern corn leaf blight in maize.
Okay, so most of the disease resistant genes, they are oligogenic in nature. Okay, so you can transfer them. So even you can also transfer male sterility, right? So we can also transfer the male sterility genes, and we can also transfer the restorer gene. So in which system will you use the restorer genes?
PGMS.
In CGMS system, you will be using the restorer genes. So you can transfer mostly the oligogenic genes. It is not that polygenic genes can't be transferred. It can be transferred, but backcross breeding works most effectively with your oligogenic, particularly monogenic, that is, which are governed by your single gene. Okay, right. So now we will see genes. How do you define a term gene? So gene. So how many alleles do gene have?
2.
One and two. So the alternative form of your allele. So for example, there is a gene which gives resistance to a particular disease named, someone told, southern corn leaf blight. Southern corn leaf blight in maize. So which organism causes southern corn leaf blight? Anyone? which organism causes the southern corn leaf blight? Even I don't remember. I think that it is Helminthosporium maydis, is it? Okay, leave it. So let us consider there is a gene which imparts resistance to this southern corn leaf blight, and then that gene, it has two alleles. Let us consider this as capital R as your dominant allele, and then small r as your recessive allele. Okay, so if the resistance is governed by the dominant allele, so if a plant possesses this genotype, so whether the plant will be resistant or susceptible. If the dominance is governed by your dominant
Resistant.
gene, it will be
Resistant.
resistant. Okay, so in this condition, in the heterozygous condition, it will be resistant. So what about in the homozygous dominant condition?
Resistant.
Resistant. So what in case of your homozygous recessive condition?
Susceptible.
Susceptible. And now let us take another example such as blast of rice. So this is also governed by gene. Okay, and let us assume the gene is um this. And in this case, okay, the resistance is governed by means of your recessive gene. So what will be the condition of a plant with this genotype?
Susceptible.
Susceptible. This
Susceptible.
susceptible. And only the homozygous recessive will be
Resistant.
resistant, right? So you just got to know if it is governed by means of your dominant gene, even a single dominant gene is enough to provide the resistance, right? Is it
Yes,
clear?
sir.
Okay, and if it is governed by means of your recessive genes, you need to require the recessive genes in the which condition?
Homozygous.
Yeah, in the homozygous condition. Then only it will impart the resistant character. So now we will see how we can transfer these genes from the donor parent to recipient parent. So in case of your dominant gene, it is very easy. Okay, in case of the if the gene, it is controlled by means of dominance mechanism, so it is very easy. So here there is a parent A and parent B. As we told, the parent A is susceptible, but it is agronomically superior one. Okay, agronomically superior. And then parent B, it is resistant, but it is not performing well. Not performing well. So you need to transfer the resistant gene from B to A. So which will you use as the recipient parent and which is your donor parent? So ultimately B will be your donor parent and A will be the recipient parent. So as A being the recipient parent, if you want to get the nuclear condition of A to restore, so you will always use the A parent, right? In the
Yes,
process,
sir.
in the back process. So A parent is your which parent?
Recipient.
Recipient as well as recurrent, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. See, you will just cross A with B, you will develop an F1, so F1 will be the heterozygote, and then you will again cross with the recurrent parent. And then how many type of genotypes can you produce by crossing the F1 with your recurrent parent? Two. Just a minute. Okay. So you will be producing two. So one will be your capital R, small r. Second will be your R, R. So among this, which will you reject?
Homozygous.
Yeah, homozygous recessive one. You will reject them
Recessive.
and you will again perform the cross with your recurrent parent. And again you will reject the homozygous recessive one and you will again perform the cross with your recurrent parent. So now tell me, how will you know that you need to reject this plant and you need to select this plant? On which basis will you perform? How will you know that? So just by seeing the plant, you can just see its phenotype, not the genotype. Then how will you proceed? Anyone can. So how will you proceed? How will you know that, okay, this is the homozygous recessive genotype, you need to reject it, but you can't see the genotype in the plant, you will just see the phenotype. So on which basis can you select it?
It will be similar to A parent.
It will be
Exactly similar to A parent.
not exactly, but someone answered the expression of disease. Yeah. See, if you cross the F1 with your recurrent parent, you will be able to produce two type of plants with two genotypes. So after raising the plant, just you inoculate the plant with the disease. Okay, this. So if one plant survives and the second plant dies, so one survives, second dies. So based on this, you can easily say, right. So one survived, so it must be heterozygote, and second died, it must be recessive. So you need to reject it and you need to select it. Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Even your answer is correct that it is similar to the dominant one, but dominance works in whenever you inoculate it with the disease, right? And if you see whether it is developing the symptoms or not. If not, then you will identify it as the heterozygote and you will be crossing it with the recurrent parent. So after your 6 to 7 back crosses, right? So here they went up to 6 back crosses. So ultimately, after 6 back crosses, so you will be increasing the genome content of which parent?
A.
So A genome content increases. Okay. But with respect to the disease resistant gene, we will be having heterozygote condition, right? That is your capital R and small r. So once if you self it, then so they wrote that BC6F1. So if you self it, and you will be able to get three different types of your plants. So we will be representing these plants as your BC6F2 because we performed the selfing. So after selfing, what it has happened is, so you got three different plants. Okay. So among this, which will you reject?
Smaller, smaller.
Yeah, the homozygous recessive will reject. And then you can, how will you identify the homozygous dominant versus heterozygote then? You will need to go to one another generation of selfing, right? So the one which segregates is your heterozygote, and the one which
Heterozygote.
do not, yeah, and then the one which do not segregate will be your homozygote. Is it okay? So how you will transfer the dominant gene? If the resistance, for example, if the resistance is gone by means of your dominant gene, so how will you transfer the dominant gene to another parent? The answer will be your which breeding procedure?
Backcross.
Backcross breeding procedure. Okay. So you will perform the backcross breeding procedure to transfer the resistant gene. This is in terms of your, if the resistant gene is gone by means of your dominant condition, right? Dominant trait. Okay, you are just performing the backcross, and then you will obtaining the progeny, again performing the backcross, again obtaining the progeny, again backcross, again progeny. But at last, whenever your A parent genome is 99%, you will be performing the selfing. Why you need to perform selfing?
To know which is your homozygous.
See, ultimately, you will perform selfing to get a plant which has homozygous genes, right? Resistant genes, right? Ultimate product is the homozygous resistant gene, right? You need to get. So this is the reason why you will be performing the selfing at last. This is backcross breeding if it is governed by means of your dominant gene. And then there is another breeding procedure, the backcross breeding if it is governed by means of your recessive gene. See, here A parent similar, it is an agronomically superior one. B parent, it is not superior but it has the genes that imparts resistance to your disease. But the thing is that these genes are now gone by the recessive one. Okay, so in case of this, what will be your recurrent parent? Anyone, what will be the recurrent parent in case of this cross? A susceptible, B resistant. You need to transfer this homozygous recessive to which parent? A parent, right?
Yeah, parent.
So A will be the recurrent parent then. So A is the recurrent parent and B will be your donor parent. So after crossing A, it is been with dominant one and B with your recessive, and this is the recessive genes which impart the resistance to the disease. So if you perform a cross between these two, you will get a heterozygote progeny, right? And after getting the heterozygote progeny, you need to cross with the A parent, right? Because you require the genome of A parent at last. So if you, is it okay?
Yes, sir.
So after crossing this with this, so what will be your, what do you call that, uh, progeny genotypes?
Homozygous dominant and heterozygous.
Homozygous dominant and heterozygous. So among this, which one will you select?
Hetero.
Why? Why you need to
Resistant
select
gene
the
is present in
Mhm. resistant gene is present in the
recessive one.
no, I
Mala.
just can't. Yeah, tell me, which plant will you select? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. See, just after getting your F1, okay. So if you cross with this recurrent parent, what will be the condition of the progeny? You told it will be homozygous dominant and heterozygous. So among these two, which will you select?
Heterozygous.
You see, you should not select both the one. For example, if you inoculate the disease to the homozygous dominant one and disease to the heterozygous one, which one will survive?
Heterozygous. No, no, but no.
Right? No, nothing will survive, right?
Mala.
Nothing survives. Yeah, nothing survives. So before crossing with your recurrent parent, the thing you need to do is you need to first self them. So after selfing, you will be getting capital R, capital R smaller, and smaller, smaller. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
So after so among these, you will be rejecting these two, as it is shown here. It is rejected, and then now this you will perform the cross with the
A parent.
right. Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Right. So in this manner, you will be selfing it and then selecting the plants which have homozygous recessive genes, right? And then again you will be backcrossing it to the recurrent parent. So after your 5 to 6 generations, right? So after 5 to 6 generations, can you incorporate these recessive genes into the susceptible parent, that is recurrent parent? Is it okay?
Sir, each generation we should do something.
Excuse me? Yeah, each generation, what you need to do? You need to backcross it and then you need to self it, right?
Yes.
See, first backcross and then self. You need to backcross and then self, right? You need to perform the selfing. Is it okay?
Okay.
So,
Yes, sir.
right? Okay. The difference between these two methods is that if the gene has dominant action, you need not go to selfing. Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if the gene is gone by means of your recessive nature, then you need to perform the selfing in the backcross breeding procedure, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, right. So these are the breeding procedures. These all breeding procedures, they involve which technique? Right.
Hybridization.
Yeah, they all involve the procedure of hybridization. Okay. So I also told you that with the help of single seed descent method, the ultimate product that we obtain is what is the ultimate product that we obtain with the help of your single seed descent method?
Single homozygous.
No, no, no. I told some name to that population.
Recombinant inbred lines. RIL.
Yeah, rills. We will be obtaining the rills. Okay, is it okay? Right, guys?
Yes, sir.
So, in the similar way, if you perform back cross, okay, ultimately you will also develop lines which are known as nils. Okay, okay. So, if you perform single seed descent method, you will be obtaining the rill, and with the help of back cross, you will be obtaining the nils. Please to remember
Sir,
this.
here,
Yeah.
sir, in BC3F2, we changed the parent.
In
BC2F2, that's a dominant.
BC2,
BC2F2. BC3F2.
BC3F2. Huh.
We changed the parents, capital letter from there.
So they changed the parent.
Okay.
No, you just don't change the parent as they did. You just need to cross it with your smaller, smaller every time because we need the genome of smaller, right? to be incorporated.
Yes, sir.
We need to get the
That is
genome of
run.
smaller, yeah, we need to get the genome of smaller, and we also need to get the resistant gene. Is it okay?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Uh, so just to remember it, we need not to change this one. This is the other technique, but you don't remember this. You just remember, see, BC3 F1 they went to F2 and then they went to F3, but again they have backcrossed it and came to BC4 F1 directly, right? Just remember, in case of your dominant one, you just need to cross it with your recurrent parent, whereas in case of it is governed by the recessive gene, you need to cross it with the recurrent parent, right? Recurrent parent, and you also need to perform, what you need to perform?
Right.
Yeah, you need to perform selfing. Okay, is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Why you need to perform selfing? Because we need to select the homozygous recessive, and again we need to cross it with the recurrent parent, right?
Yes, sir.
Is it okay? So we just saw three different breeding procedures which involves the hybridization, that is your pedigree, bulk, and backcross breeding program. So among the three different procedures, which procedure is used to transfer the genes is your backcross breeding program, right? Whether it might be your dominant gene or it might also be your recessive gene, right? Is it okay?
Yes, sir. Okay, sir.
Okay.
Sir,
Yeah.
sir, what are the method to transfer polygenic genes then?
Polygenic genes. See, polygenic genes will also be transferred by using backcross itself, but for that you will be requiring three different types of markers. Okay, and that is not
Okay.
the syllabus of your PG masters level, but you can learn it in the, but you can learn it in masters as you are now in UG. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I'll just give you the information. If you want to transfer the polygenes, that is, if you want to transfer a quantitative trait loci QTL, you need to have two flanking marker, okay? Flanking marker of the gene, and you need to also have the linked marker of a gene. But just remember, this will not be the questions in your JRF. You can just remember. So you need to see. If you want to get into the polygenic transfer, you need to perform molecular breeding, okay, right?
Yes.
Because
Yes, sir.
polygenes will be controlled by many number of genes, and these genes,
Yes, sir.
yeah, they might be located in a what do you call that, in a large positions, right? In a very long position on the chromosomes. So if you want to
Map
transfer that,
linkage.
yeah, you need to try, if you need to transfer the entire length, right? So what you need to do is you need to have the flanking marker, right? You know what do you mean by flanking marker?
No, sir.
Okay, so just imagine this is the entire length of polygene if you need to transfer. So flanking
Yes.
marker means you need to have a marker here and also here, and then the linked marker to the polygenes, okay, and then the linked
Okay.
marker. So if you get the positive result of flanking markers, so we can say that this entire length has been transferred, right?
Yes, sir.
Don't worry, you can learn this in masters if you once get into um, higher courses. Okay. So up to now, just remember dominant gene and then recessive gene. You can eventually learn it. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And
Sir,
then any
it is
other?
not in our syllabus, no?
No, no, no. It is not in your syllabus. Do you have molecular breeding in your syllabus? No, na. I think there is no molecular
No, sir.
breeding in.
No, sir. No, sir. In Fundan Singh, we only have mutation breeding, polyploid, distant, and yeah, transgenic.
Yeah, molecular breeding. Molecular breeding is not involved in PG. but you need to know, or you need to have the information about molecular markers. I think it will be covered in genetics. Okay.
Yeah.
Because it is a concept of genetics, so you will be covering the molecular markers in the genetics chapter, right? Is it okay about
Yes.
today's breeding methods? And if you have any other queries, you can just tell me now and we will try to solve it. You can also drop a personal message to me, right? Is it okay, guys?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So with this, I'll conclude the today's class, and thank you all for joining and for your patient listening. Okay, now we will meet tomorrow for the new class.